Pretty amazing, isn't it? To think of all the things we use in everyday life that start out as minerals inside rock, just like this one. Okay, now I've got a quiz for you. You name any letter of the alphabet, and I'll try to guess something that starts with that letter that we use every day that comes from stuff we get from mines. C, that's easy. Cars. Cars are mostly metal. Half their weight is steel. Then there's lead in the battery, there's aluminum in the brakes, and lots of copper wiring, especially in hybrid and electric cars. S, solar panel. W, windows. Windows are made of glass. Glass comes from silica sand, which we get from mines. G, goalpost. H, health. Have you taken your zinc or iron tablets today? Z, are you trying to tell me something about my zipper? Okay, I get it. But you know, getting minerals out of the ground is not a new thing. It's been going on for thousands of years, originally with First Nations groups all up and down the coast. But what about this place, the Britannia mine? In 1888, long before roads and railways were built along this coast, a Scottish physician named Dr. Forbes traveled up Howe Sound by boat, and he carried his prospecting tools up to the summit of this very mountain, Britannia Mountain. You see, he was a miner at heart, and he discovered something up there that was soon to become one of the most useful and valuable minerals of the day, copper. Turns out this was a huge find. By the early 1900s, the development of a great mine was underway, digging mostly for copper, but also for gold, silver, and other ores. The Britannia mine was a massive operation with a tunnel system running deep into the mountain. 210 kilometers of tunnels. There were vertical shafts that stretched from 1,300 meters above sea level to 650 meters below sea level. Of course, as the mine grew, it needed miners, lots of them. At its peak of production, in 1928, there were 1,100 workers on the payroll. This 20-story concentrator, or mill building, is where the valuable ores, the copper, lead, zinc, gold, and silver, were separated from the waste rock. They could process as much as 6,000 tons of rock here each day. Starting at the top floor, the baseball-sized chunks of rock went through a series of crushers and a clever chemical process so that by the time they reached the ground floor, this is what was left. No more waste rock, just the valuable minerals called concentrate. In its prime, the Britannia mine produced more copper than any other mine in the British Empire. Copper from this little port made its way around the world. During World War II, battles half a world away had an impact on Britannia, and Britannia had an impact on them. Copper was needed for making ammunition like bombs and shells. In fact, the need was so great that the federal government exempted miners from being drafted into the army to keep as many as possible working in the mines to feed the need for copper. The company built 2 towns. One was 4.5 kilometers up this mountainside. You'd climb these stairs, all 347 of them. Then you'd hop on a little inclined railway and ride standing up at about a 30-degree angle. Finally, a mine train would take you the last leg into the town site, Mount Shear. The town site was the base of operations for the mine, and it was the home for the underground workers and their families. Wasn't much to look at first, but at its peak it matured into a bustling community of 2,000 people where there was no shortage of things to do. Down here beside Howe Sound, the other town, simply called the Beach, was the base for the milling and surface operations. This is where the processed ore was loaded onto ships for transportation to the smelter. And this is where the mine manager lived, kept an eye on you. The three-story company store provided everything you needed, from soda pop to groceries to shoes or even an oriental carpet. For more than 50 years, there was no road or railway to these towns, so the only way to get up or down the coast was by boat. A trip to Vancouver was a rare treat. There's a story of a group of women who shared one single fancy hat that made the trip to Vancouver many times on a different head each trip. As with all company towns, there were hard times but good times too. The town's isolation bred a special community spirit. The big social event of every year was the crowning of the Copper Queen. When the road from Vancouver to Squamish was built in 1958, people could easily come and go. But that changed forever the close-knit character of this place. Over the years of its operation, the Britannia mine pulled enough ore out of these mountains to produce about 800,000 tons of metal. That's equal to the weight of about 4,000 jumbo jets. But finally, by the early 1970s, the mine was struggling to make a profit. It was the end of an era for this mine and for company towns like the beach and the town site, not only here, but across BC and elsewhere in Canada. In 1974, the last whistle was blown and the Britannia mine was closed. Mine and move. That was the name of the game for most mining companies all across Canada back then. The mine shut down, the company packed up and left, and most people moved away. But here's the thing, where are we now? We're on the BC coast, and what does it do here? Well, it rains, and it snows, and the snow melts, and all that water has to go somewhere, so it finds its way down into the ground. And down into the tunnels. But the ground here is full of metallic minerals. Remember, that's why the mine was built here. And when those minerals come in contact with water and with air, they form an acidic, heavy metal soup that drains into the creeks and groundwater. It's actually a natural process called acid rock drainage. But the problem is, when you have over 200 kilometers of tunnels, there's a whole lot more surface area for the water and air to mix with the minerals in the rock. And so up until a few years ago, about 300 kilograms a day of dissolved copper and other minerals flowed down from these mountains into Howe Sound. So if you did this back then, well, looky here, pennies. Lots and lots of pennies. Of course, it wasn't exactly like that, but back then there was enough metal in the water here for about 100,000 pennies every day. If you were a fish, that was a bad deal. It's hard to believe now, but when the mine closed in the 1970s, it met the environmental standards of its day. So what changed? How come one day the pollution is acceptable and the next day Britannia Beach has a reputation as one of the biggest sources of marine pollution anywhere in North America? The 1970s in Canada was notable for a couple of things. Really great fashion sense and an increasing awareness by people like you and me of environmental and social issues. Everyone realized that something had to be done to stop polluting Howe Sound. So the government and the mining industry put up the money and got the ball rolling. It was a huge job, but slowly but surely, the water was diverted and treated. And today it runs fresh and clean into Howe Sound. Way to go, Britannia.
Boy, there's a lot of stuff living here. The algae on the rocks and things. You know, not long ago, nothing could live here. Now we've got mussels and barnacles and seaweed. We're finding amphipods and other crustaceans and marine worms. That's got to be great news for the fish and for the birds and for the marine mammals of Howe Sound too. It's good to hear the old mine whistle blow again and to see the mill building all spruced up. But what can we learn from this story? Britannia Mine was one of Canada's industrial building blocks, an important mine of its day. Thousands of people worked hard here to bring the world much needed metals. And here's a neat fact. Did you know that most of the copper in circulation today is recycled? So it's just possible that you might own something that started its life here in this mine.
But Britannia isn't just a story of the past. It also teaches us how times have changed and how mining in Canada has changed now that we have a greater understanding of its effects on the environment. It's an ongoing journey. The more we learn, the closer we'll come to getting it right.
You know, if you think about it, just about everything we use day to day is either grown, like this carrot, or mined, like the metal in my bike. You see, we're all involved. In a way, you could say we're all miners. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy exploring the rest of the museum. And when you get home, have a look around. See how many other things you can find that might have started out from rock inside a mountain like this one. Okay, now, have you got one last letter for me?